Demon Slayer Infinity Castle just made $722 million at the box office and became the highest-grossing Japanese film of all time. But here's what blew my mind. The initial rendering calculations said it would take 10 years to finish. So how did Ufotable pull this off? And what animation secrets did they use that are literally illegal in normal anime production? Let me show you. If you love anime, you need to subscribe because today we're diving into the insane production secrets behind the most beautiful anime film ever made. The Oscars just released a behind-the-scenes documentary about Infinity Castle. And what they revealed about Ufotable's animation process is absolutely mind-blowing. We're talking about techniques that other studios call impossibly inefficient, methods that break the laws of anime physics, and a level of detail that required hundreds of layers for a single 3-second scene. This is how they did it. First, let's talk about the problem Ufotable faced. Infinity Castle takes place inside a massive, gravity-defying fortress that constantly shifts and changes. The architecture doesn't follow normal physics. Rooms flip upside down. Hallways extend infinitely. Gravity changes direction mid-fight. And the entire movie is one continuous battle sequence through this impossible space. Yuichi Tereo, the finishing director at Ufotable, revealed something insane. When they first calculated how long it would take to render all the visuals for Infinity Castle using normal methods, the estimate came back as 10 years. Not to animate it, just to render what they'd already animated. We wanted every frame to feel alive, as if the castle itself was breathing, one animator explained. But how do you animate a breathing castle when your computers say it'll take a decade to process? Ufotable built a completely custom production pipeline from scratch specifically for this movie. They invented new lighting techniques, new compositing methods, new ways to stack 2D and 3D elements. And they threw every rule of efficient anime production out the window. Director Haruo Sotozaki admitted, "It's overwhelmingly inefficient. But there are things only a certain artist can draw in that specific way at that pixel-level precision. In other words, we're doing this the hard way because it's the only way to make it perfect." So what's Ufotable's secret? One word: Satsuei. In Japanese, Satsuei means photography or filming. But in anime production, it refers to the compositing process, where all the separate elements get layered together to create the final image. Most anime studios outsource this to specialized companies. Ufotable does it 100% in-house. And they don't just composite. They turn it into an art form. For a single 3-second fight sequence in Infinity Castle, Ufotable stacks hundreds of layers including hand-drawn 2D character animation, 3D background environments, lighting effects like sun rays, firelight, reflections, and shadows, visual effects like water, flames, lightning, and blood, atmospheric effects like dust, smoke, particles, and mist, camera movement and depth of field adjustments, and final color grading and cinematic polish. Each layer is crafted by a different team, and they all have to sync perfectly. The result? What they call a symphonic level of detail that makes 2D characters feel tangible and three-dimensional. Remember those gorgeous water breathing and flame breathing effects? Director of photography Yuichi Tereo revealed, the water breathing technique, particularly the waves within the attack when it is released, is all composed of hand-drawn elements. There's a little 3D CG in the final composite, but almost all of those water elements are done by hand. It's why they look like moving traditional Japanese paintings instead of typical anime effects. Here's where it gets wild. In normal 3D animation, you have to maintain spatial integrity. That means objects stay the right size relative to each other. Distances remain consistent between cuts, and physics behaves realistically. But director Kenichi Katsuna revealed something shocking. Sometimes it's hard like in the Mugen Train. Ufotable's CG misrepresented the space in each cut and prioritized the appearance of the screen. In other words, they intentionally broke the laws of physics to make shots look cooler. In the Tanjiro versus Akaza fight, the castle room changes size between camera angles. The distance between characters shifts. Gravity direction alters mid-sequence. Why? Because maintaining perfect spatial accuracy would make certain shots look boring or confusing. So Ufotable said, screw physics. We're making art. In the Mugen Train movie, the 3D train and 2D characters blend seamlessly. But here's the secret. The train doesn't actually move consistently. Its speed, size, and position change between shots to create the feeling of movement without being spatially accurate. It's movie magic, and it only works because Ufotable controls every step of production in-house. Most anime runs at 12 frames per second, drawing one image every 2 frames, called animating on twos. This is the industry standard. It's cost-effective. It works. Ufotable said nah. For critical action sequences in Infinity Castle, they animate at 24 frames per second, drawing every single frame. That's double the work. But it gets crazier. Animator Nozomu Abe, responsible for most of the money shots, revealed they don't stick to one frame rate. In a single sequence, they'll animate on 2s for normal movement, switch to 1s for slow motion moments, go to 4s for impact frames, then back to 1s for the follow-through. When Tanjiro slices through a demon's neck, what looks like one cut is actually 3 distinct cuts woven together across different frame rates with hand-drawn motion blur. Most viewers don't consciously notice, but your brain feels the difference. Director of photography Yuichi Tereo revealed another secret. Whenever you see Tanjiro saying "don't give up," the animators are probably doing something similar with their headphones on. The animation team syncs their work to music. They listen to the soundtrack while drawing, so the movement rhythm matches the emotional beat. That's why Demon Slayer fights feel like dance sequences instead of just combat. Most anime studios outsource. Ufotable doesn't. They do everything in-house. Storyboarding and direction, key animation, in-between animation, background art, 3D modeling and animation, visual effects, compositing, color grading, and sound design coordination. When everything happens under one roof, the director can make changes in real time. Director Sotozaki explained, "If you look at a lot of the keyframes, we worked really closely with our 3D department to make sure everyone's in full lockstep because we didn't want any weird effects where 2D characters are sliding around on 3D surroundings." They test keyframes in 3D environments before finishing the animation to make sure everything aligns perfectly. Compare this to studios like Mappa that handle multiple huge projects simultaneously and outsource heavily. This allows more anime to be produced, but quality can be uneven. Ufotable takes the opposite approach: fewer projects, longer timelines, perfect execution. That's why Infinity Castle took 3.5 years to make, and why Part 2 won't come out until 2027. So did all this insane effort pay off? Oh yes. $722 million worldwide box office, $134.50 million in North America alone, the highest grossing Japanese film ever in the US. First Japanese film to cross $700 million globally, 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the first anime film ever to release in IMAX's expanded 1:43:1 aspect ratio. The movie is still in theaters in Japan. They just announced IMAX 1:43:1, ScreenX, and Ultra 4DX releases in February 2026. Crunchyroll CEO Rahul Purini said, "We have spent the last 8 years building this fandom. There's definitely urgency for all of us to bring more Demon Slayer to fans as soon as we can." This movie proved anime can compete with and beat Hollywood blockbusters on a global stage. Now, let's talk about the Academy Awards. Infinity Castle was eligible for the 2026 Oscars in the Best Animated Feature category. In fact, the Oscars even released that behind-the-scenes documentary about Ufotable's production process. The film was even nominated for a Golden Globe in the Best Animated Motion Picture category. But on January 22nd, 2026, the official Oscar nominations were announced. Demon Slayer, Infinity Castle was not nominated. The nominees for Best Animated Feature were K-Pop Demon Hunters, Zootopia 2, Arco, little Amelie, or the character of Rain and Elio. Fans are devastated. Critics called it a snub. The film had record-breaking box office, critical acclaim, industry recognition, and technical mastery. But the Academy has historically struggled with anime. Only 2 anime films have ever won Best Animated Feature: Spirited Away in 2003 and The Boy and the Heron in 2024, both by Hayao Miyazaki. Unless you're Miyazaki, the Academy tends to overlook anime, no matter how successful or groundbreaking. Let me bring this full circle. Demon Slayer: Infinity Castle was technically impossible to make. The rendering would take 10 years. The frame rate work was inefficient. The spatial physics were wrong. The layering was excessive. Every rule of efficient anime production said, don't do this. But Ufotable did it anyway. They invented new techniques, built custom pipelines, animated for 3.5 years, stacked hundreds of layers per shot, and they created the highest-grossing Japanese film of all time. Did they get an Oscar nomination? No. The Academy passed them over. But here's the thing. The box office speaks louder than any award. $722 million worldwide. Millions of fans around the globe. A cultural phenomenon that transcends language barriers. Infinity Castle didn't need the Oscars to prove its worth. The world already voted with their wallets and their hearts. Sometimes impossible just means nobody's tried hard enough yet. Ufotable proved that prioritizing artistry over efficiency, investing time over speed, and breaking rules when necessary can create something truly legendary. Oscar or no Oscar. Part 2 drops in 2027. Part 3 in 2029. And if they're using the same techniques, we're in for something special. Have you seen Infinity Castle yet? What was your favorite animated sequence? And do you think the Academy made a mistake by not nominating it? Drop a comment below. Hit that like button. Subscribe for more anime deep dives. And I'll see you in the next one.